Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I'm the Moon Mama. Today is the day governed by Mercury, and Mercury is currently in Cancer. Retrograde. A retrograde means that, and Mercury goes retrograde every 88 days. So we hear a lot of Mercury's in retrograde, Mercury's in retrograde, Mercury's in retrograde. And what it actually means is that the planet has the appearance of going backwards. If you can imagine two cars, at the same position, and so that would be Earth and Mercury, and then Earth is going much faster, and so it appears that Mercury is backing up, like it's doing a retrograde, and that's just because of every 88 days it comes into a angle where that is the appearance, where it looks like Mercury is actually going backwards because of this thing, but really it's just a perception thing. But in our psyche, perception and light, all of that is the most real thing ever. So when Mercury has this appearance of going backwards, it does something in our psyche which gives us the energy, the opportunity to review, renew, revitalize old patterns, old ways of being, for the purpose of updating our software, so to say. Mercury is the software. It governs our minds. It's how we think. So every 88 days, we want to be able to look at our thinking, because our perception and our thinking creates our reality, and see how that has worked. We want to take note. We want to take inventory and see how it's working. And in Cancer, that is our early childhood patterning. It's important to really understand that who you are because of your 0 to 7 years. Everything about you comes from being 0 to 7. And so whatever's going on in your life at that point, before you were really cognizant and thinking about things, and before you were self-aware, you were absorbing, you were a sponge, and you were absorbing everything in your environment, and then you begin to live that stuff out. So Mercury in Cancer, like I said, I'm teaching a Mercury retrograde class. I've been talking about that. I teach a Mercury retrograde class every Mercury retrograde. And this one is about looking at our early childhood patternings through the lineage of our mother. The moon is in Scorpio today. So today I want to talk about our sexual shame, because I don't know a woman that doesn't have sexual shame, including myself. I don't know a woman that doesn't carry sexual shame, including myself. And what sexual shame is, it's the way we think about our sexuality. And in the Western culture, we've been told that if a woman is free sexually, then she's a whore, then she's promiscuous. We've been told that sex is only for marriage, and sex is between two people. And there's also something that we do in this country that is fucking ridiculous. This sort of Christian movement towards not teaching children or people in puberty about their sexuality, not having them understand it. So, when I was a young girl, my mother did teach me about sex to the best of her ability, but there was so much shame around her talking to me about it because she was a prostitute, so I always felt like embarrassed of her. I always felt ashamed of how she lived in her body. I always felt like what she was doing was harming me or harming others. Like I could feel myself thinking like my mother's sexuality was nasty. Even the language I have now is not what I had then, but there was just a deep shame inside of me around how my mother walked. That she swayed her hips when she walked infuriated me. And so what that did was I clamped down on my own sexuality. But our sexuality is like eating. It's like food. It's like breath. It's like breathing. It's like beating hearts. So how can you clamp down on it? And most women have something like that going on, where we are, where we're cut off from what we really believe and desire sexually, because the culture has told us that we are to control ourselves. We are not to be wild. We are not to be free. We are not to be uninhibited, because if we are, then we're going to pay a cost for that. And that is it's tantamount to being the greatest sin ever, because our sexuality, and it's not about who you're fucking. That's not what your sexuality is about. Your sexuality is about how you feel about your creative power and potential. It's about understanding that everything is sexuality in this world. Everything is masculine and feminine, and these two aspects coming together and creating something else. That's how everything is created. One negative charge, one positive charge, and it creates something else. Everything is having sex. Trees are having sex with the environment. Bees are having sex with flowers. You know, our minds are having sex with other people's minds. Like, everything is this coming together of opposites to create something new. And if we don't understand it that way, and we judge it inside of ourselves, if we judge our bodies, if we judge our feelings, if we judge our attractions. I remember when I was married, I just gotten married, and I was attracted to another man, and it stunned me. Like, I was like, oh my God, I didn't expect that. I really believe that marriage would mean that I would never be attracted to another man. That's what I meant. I thought it believed. And that's what I thought it meant. And when I found myself attracted to another man, it dumbfounded me. Like, I was totally stunned. And I actually went to my husband and said, wow, you know, I'm attracted to somebody else. And he was so, he just, and I understand it. He was like, don't tell me that. Like, it threatened him so much, but I wasn't meaning it as a threat. I was meaning it as an exploration of, like, what is this thing called marriage that we've all bought into and said that we're supposed to be with one man and one woman for the rest of our lives. And yet my energy is saying, no, that's not what's true. And so what that did was that created shame inside of me. So I felt ashamed of having that feeling. I felt ashamed of being attracted to someone else. And I felt ashamed that I couldn't process it with my husband and work it out so that I could learn or grow or transform. It wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't a threat at all. It was an opportunity to explore what's really happening here. and so that's this thing around sexual shame. And if we think about our heritage and where we come from, and as people who were captives here, when our ancestors, who we are, were enslaved, the people who owned slaves participated in all sorts of sexual brutality towards the slaves, towards the captives. Rape, incest, all sorts of things that are unspeakable acts. And so we carry sexual shame in a deep way from our time here as captives. And it's important for us to be able to explore those things. One of the movies that I really appreciate around this issue is 12 Years a Slave, because you get to see the dynamic of this captive, this slave owner, who was obsessed with one of the women that were enslaved. He was obsessed with her, the woman, the character played by Lupita. And his wife, who was a white, Christian, upstanding woman, was infuriated that her husband was completely obsessed with someone who was she called lesser than her, and how that relationship played out, how the jealousy and the anger and the rage and the dysfunction played out in this sexual triangle. It was totally a sexual triangle. Though Lupita's character wasn't agreeing to this, she was being raped, you know, and he could rape her because she was his property. And so the dynamic of that, like, all of that stuff is still in our energetic core today because it has not been dealt with. We have not looked at what that means. In our families, women, black women who are half white, who, you know, if like all of that sort of stuff from long ago, not current, like people who are in agreement, but I'm talking about captors who were impregnating the people who were enslaved, and not acknowledging or not honoring those relationships and honoring those, like, all of that stuff creates the sexual shame we hold. And I know that I hold it in my body. I can feel it. Like my mother was, as a prostitute, her mother was the product of rape. And all of that stuff really lives inside of me, and it's intense. And so for the past few days, I've been doing, these deep meditations to move that energy out of me and seeing where I'm blocked. And I just encourage all of you to join the Mercury Retrograde course, and to be looking, while the moon is in Scorpio, look at your own sexual history. Look at and these are things that nobody talks about. The women don't talk about it. The men don't talk about it. And so you have to be courageous to ask questions if you're interested, or you do meditation work, you intuit it, you can feel it yourself, And so I can feel a lot of these things in my body. And I know, like, I've watched the women in my family and their sexual behavior and how they function. And I see my own sexual behavior and how I function. And I'm doing the work to begin to excavate that so that I can make new choices. And it's rigorous. It's not easy work, but it's necessary work. And so with that, I encourage you all to join the class. Today we're going to be doing a community lacing, where we're going to be doing a reprogramming of our minds around issues that come from from this pattern in our country. And that's really it. I'm all over the place. I'm tired, and I'm so looking for Mercury retrograde to be complete when it's time. But this eclipse energy that we're in, which will end on the 4th of July, is very significant. And if you've been feeling exhausted, it's because we're really doing deep work. I wake up every day, every morning, exhausted, because in my subconscious, I know with Mercury in Cancer, in the subconscious, I'm doing some of the deepest work I've probably ever done in my life. So with that, peace and blessings. Have a wonderful day. Thank you all for participating and joining the classes and the Venus class and all those sort of things. And, I love your feedback. And that is all. Peace and blessings. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.